There used to be a way of living on a street that everyone understood and nobody had written down. You did not need a handbook. You did not need anyone to explain it to you. You absorbed it the way you absorbed the smell of your neighbor's cooking or the sound of the evening news through a shared wall. You knew which doors you could knock on without warning. You knew which family was going through something and needed to be left alone. You knew exactly how much noise was acceptable at what hour and what happened to the family that regularly exceeded it. You knew because everyone on that street knew. And the knowing held the street together in ways that no council policy or community program has ever replicated. That world, the world of the unwritten rules, is almost entirely gone, and the streets that replaced it are quieter and colder and considerably less safe than the ones that came before. The modern reality. This is not about nostalgia for a simpler time. The evidence is too precise for that. The UK government's 2023 Community Life Survey found that only 32% of British adults feel a strong sense of belonging to their local area. The Office for National Statistics found that 1 in 3 British adults reports feeling lonely often or always. In America, the picture is identical. A 2023 Gallup poll found that 17% of Americans reported having no one to turn to in a crisis. Yet in the 1950s working-class communities of Britain and America, communities with far less money, far less space, and far fewer formal support structures than anything we have today, almost nobody faced a crisis alone. Not because the government provided support, because the street did, because the unwritten rules of the street created a social infrastructure so effective and so reliable that the people inside it never needed to ask whether anyone would show up when things went wrong. They already knew the answer. The 1950s social engine. The 1950s working-class street in Britain and its near-identical counterpart in industrial America, was a social structure of remarkable complexity, operating without a single written rule. Terraced houses in rows, families who had lived beside each other for decades, shared back alleys, a corner shop that functioned as an information exchange as much as a retail outlet, a pub at the end of the road where the men went on a Friday and the women talked across back fences on a Monday morning. Children who played together in the street and were answerable not just to their own parents, but to every adult who saw them. The 22 unwritten rules. 1. You kept your front step clean. This was the first and most visible rule on any working-class street. 2. You did not let your children run wild. Children played in the street, that was understood and expected, but they played within limits that every parent on the street enforced collectively. A child who misbehaved in front of any adult was corrected by that adult, and their parents were told. The street raised children communally, and every family benefited from that collective standard. 3. You kept your domestic arguments inside after 9. Walls of terraced houses were thin. Everyone could hear everything. The unwritten agreement was simple. After 9 in the evening, the street belonged to quiet, not silence, quiet. 4. You did not discuss other people's business outside the street. What happened on the street stayed on the street. The knowledge that Mrs. Patterson was struggling to pay her rent, or that the Bradleys were going through a difficult time, that knowledge was held within the community that needed it, and not shared beyond it. 5. You returned what you borrowed, and you returned it better than you found it. Tools, cups of flour, a spare egg. The informal lending economy of the working-class street operated on one absolute principle. What was borrowed came back. 6.
You acknowledged every person on your street by name. Not just the families you were close to, every person. The elderly widow at number 12 who you had never had a full conversation with, the man at the end of the terrace who kept himself to himself. You acknowledged them. You used their name. You established every time you passed that they were a known person in a place that knew them. 7. You helped without being asked when you could see it was needed. The family whose husband had just gone into the hospital, the woman struggling to carry her shopping up the step, the neighbor whose coal had run out in January. You did not wait to be asked. You saw the need and you moved to meet it, because on a street where everyone was one bad week away from needing the same thing, waiting to be asked was an indulgence nobody could afford to pay. 8. You never let a new family feel unwelcome. When a family moved into the street, the neighbors introduced themselves. A knock at the door, a plate of something, a word of welcome. This was not performed friendliness. It was the practical understanding that a new family needed to be brought into the network of mutual obligation as quickly as possible, for their benefit and for the streets. 9. You kept your domestic arguments private. Arguments happened. Every family on every street knew that. But the rule was clear. What happened between a husband and wife stayed between them and did not spill into the street. 10. You paid what you owed at the corner shop, and you paid it promptly. Credit at the corner shop was a lifeline that depended entirely on trust. The shopkeeper extended it because he knew his customers. His customers maintained it because they settled their tabs. A family that ran up a tab and was slow to pay did not just damage their own relationship with the shopkeeper, they threatened the credit system that all the street relied on.
We are halfway through, but the rules that come next were the ones that surprised me most in researching this video, because they are not about behavior toward the community. They are about something more personal, about what the street expected of you in your relationship with yourself. You dressed properly when you left the house. Whatever was happening inside, however tight the money was, however hard the week had been, you left the house dressed, clean clothes, hair done. The standard was not fashion, it was dignity. You kept your word, even when it was inconvenient. If you said you would be somewhere, you were there. If you said you would do something, you did it. On a street where reputation was the primary currency and where favors were the only safety net most families had, your word was the instrument through which every transaction of trust was conducted. You showed respect to the elderly. An older person on the street was addressed formally, helped with heavy shopping automatically, never spoken over or ignored in conversation. The respect was not sentimental. It was the recognition that older people on the street were the holders of the community's memory, the ones who knew what the street had been through, who had helped whom and when, and what the unwritten rules actually were. You kept your garden or yard tidy. In terraced streets with small backyards and narrow strips of front garden, the state of your outdoor space was visible to everyone around you. A neglected yard was a signal that something had gone wrong inside the house, and the street noticed, not to judge, but to watch. You brought something when you visited. You did not arrive at a neighbor's door empty-handed. Something from the garden, a piece of cake, a few eggs. The contribution was modest, and the gesture was the point. The acknowledgement that you were entering someone else's household and that entering deserved a mark of respect. You checked on the vulnerable without being asked and without making a fuss. The elderly woman at the end of the row who lived alone, the family whose mother had just had a new baby, the man who had been ill. You checked. Not formally, not on a schedule. You found a reason to pass by.
You knocked under the pretense of something else. You made sure, without making it into a performance of concern that would embarrass the person being checked on. You settled disputes face to face, never through third parties. If you had a problem with a neighbor, you went to that neighbor. You did not complain to other neighbors first. You did not let the grievance fester until it became a street-wide conflict. You knocked on the door and you said what needed to be said, and you resolved it. The directness was not aggression, it was respect. The recognition that the person you had a problem with deserved to hear it from you rather than about you. This was the last rule, and in many ways, it contained all the others. The street was not yours. You were its custodian for the time you were there, and custodians leave things better than they found them. What killed the street? These rules did not disappear because people decided they were outdated. They disappeared because the conditions that made them essential were removed one by one across 3 decades. The corner shop that anchored the credit system closed when the supermarket arrived. The shared back alley that created daily contact was sealed off or sold. The children who played in the street were driven inside first by the television and then by the fear, statistically unwarranted but culturally overwhelming, that the street was no longer safe. The pub at the end of the road that was the Friday information exchange closed in the 1990s when the chain bars arrived. And each time one of these physical structures disappeared, it took a section of the unwritten rule book with it. Because the rules had never been written down, they could not survive the disappearance of the conditions that had made them obvious. And when the conditions changed, the rules did not adapt. They simply stopped being known. What this video argues is that the street wasn't perfect. It argues that the social infrastructure it created, the network of mutual knowledge and obligation that meant nobody faced a crisis alone, was worth keeping, and that we have not yet built anything to replace it. That's how it begins. Not with a policy, not with a program, with a knock and an open door, and the particular warmth of a street that is remembering, one small act at a time, what it is supposed to be. If this video gave you something to take back to your street, share it with someone who lives on it, and come back next week. Echo of Yesterday has more of this to find.